Beth's here as well.
Evening, Joel.
Just a reminder,
Evening, Beth.
today's conference is being recorded.
Okay, so I don't need to remind the clerk to start the recording.
I got it this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So we're waiting for Councillor Lamb. Who from the staff is here?
I'm here. Patricia Allen.
Patricia Allen, thank you.
And Carl and Drew are on the other line. They're here as well.
Oh, okay.
Tapal, our auditors.
So, yes. Yeah, I know who you mean. Carl and, did you say Drew?
Andrew Drew for short.
Okay. Andrew Apple. All right. Welcome, gentlemen.
Joining conference.
Sorry, I didn't catch who that was.
Sorry, Garth Nash.
Oh, Garth Nash. Okay. Welcome.
Joining conference.
Thank you.
Joe Lamb.
Good evening, Councillor Lamb.
Good evening.
Do we have any other staff tonight? Is our fire chief on the line?
Yeah, I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Bob.
Joining conference.
Scott Nash.
Welcome, Scott. Well, I think we are just about done with the roll call. I'll keep it handy in case anybody else comes on. Let me just advance the agenda here. So, without any further delay, I would like to call the meeting to order and thank you all for participating. I'll ask the councillors if anyone has a pecuniary interest to disclose. And hearing nothing, let the record show that there was no pecuniary interest disclosed. I will now ask for a motion to approve the agenda, and just before I do that, there is a change to the agenda. I had a conversation late this afternoon with John Jackson about item 6.2, and it became apparent that there are potentially some errors in this in the proposed motion, that some inconsistencies between that and the material that was circulated. And Mr. Jackson indicated that he was not in a position to answer the questions that we had and suggested that we defer this to another meeting. So what I would like is a motion to approve the agenda with the deletion of item 6.2, merit right-of-way request. Can I get a mover and seconder, please?
I'll move it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I can second, Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Is there any objection to or additional amendments that you want to make to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I will declare the agenda approved as circulated with the deletion of item 6.2. So in order to deal with the planning items, could I get a motion to move into committee of the whole, please?
Also moved, Joe McEwen.
Councillor McEwen, thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second that.
Okay, I think I heard Councillor Gordon Matthews first, maybe. So we'll do that at 6:34 p.m. Anyone opposed to going to Committee of the Whole?
Sorry, could I just ask one question? It's Carl Pahapel. We're fine with whichever order you wish to proceed in, but we were, I think we were to present after the approval of the agenda, but it's not a concern. We can follow whatever order works for council.
Okay, you know what?
It's the CEO clerk. We did have, after the approval of the agenda, we did have item 4, which is the presentation from our auditors prior to moving into Committee of the Whole, unless you want to do that in the Committee of the Whole as well.
I don't see a problem with doing it.
Yes, I apologize. I somehow or other I managed to scroll past that on here. So thanks for drawing it to my attention. Yes, you should have, Carl. You should have had a stated hour. So we'll let you go first, and we'll. There isn't a particular motion on coming out of this. I don't believe, is there? No.
No.
No. So it's simply a presentation regarding our 2019 financial statement. So thank you, Carl. I will pass it over to you and Andrew, and take it away.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to have us to present the results of the annual independent audit. The audit this year had to be done slightly different, adapted to our current COVID-19 circumstances. Of course, we sort of consistent with prior years, we come in and commence our audit in the late fall time. At that point in time, my staff go in and review your accounting systems, do tests of processes and controls and that sort of thing to see that the systems are working the way they're supposed to work. And so we were able to do that and had no issues or concerns or errors that came out from that. And then the second part of the audit, more sort of the financial statement part of the audit, that we did remotely this year. So thank you for the assistance from staff providing us with all of the documents that we requested. So that was all done at our office. Well, actually, was that probably done partly at our office and partly at the home of a couple of our staff. So our staff have been working remotely pretty much from the middle of March, also, other than the admin at the office. So, but in any event, between all of that we were able to complete our audit the way it's supposed to be done. And on page 1 of the package that you have is our independent auditor's report. This is in standard format. In other words, it's a clean auditor's report. The report is fairly lengthy. It is now a page and a half in length. And for those that remember these reports going back 10 or 15 years, this used to be a 3-paragraph report. But having said that, the report now, it's sort of as in many fiscal situations, full disclosure, transparency, detailing sort of the responsibility that at the end of the day, the financial statements are the responsibility of the municipality, and as your staff prepare the financial statements, we of course assist in that process, guide them, answer questions, and support them as required. But at the end of the day, they're your financial statements, and our role as independent auditors is to review those statements and to do tests and procedures to provide, to give us comfort. Those tests are done in accordance with the standards that are set out by our professional body, and we are required to document all of those processes and procedures. And I can happily report that this is a clean auditor's report, and that your consolidated financial statements, and they're again, they're consolidated. Just to remind everybody, these financial statements include the cemetery board and the library board. And of course, your fiscal year end is December 31st. And so that is our audit report for December 31st of 2019, a clean audited report. I'll just make a few high-level comments in terms of the financial results for the year. In particular, there was a significant investment in the current year in tangible capital assets. And actually, if you look on page 18 of the package, page 18 provides some details in terms of additions for the year. And as you can see there, reading from right to left, the second column from the right-hand side is the totals for the current year. So you can see there was a net investment in capital assets of $706,000 for the year. And that compares to amortization or depreciation of existing assets of $677,000. So in other words, your expenditure, your replacement investment in capital assets exceeded the write-down because of the use and aging of your capital assets. This was a net investment in capital assets in the current year. Just turning back to the balance sheet on page 3 of the package. During the course of the year, you replaced temporary borrowings, which had been in place in the prior year with long-term debt. As you can see, the temporary borrowing category went from $971,000 to nil, and with a essentially equivalent increase in the municipal debt, long-term debt, from $298,000 to $1,089,000. You can find details of that debt in Note 7, which is on page 11 of the package. And again, one of the things certainly pleased to report on is the very, very effective cost of capital these days. Your long-term debt at 2.33% and 2.32% and 2.5%, obviously at historical lows, which makes borrowing that much less painful in terms of the repayment, of course. On page 11, you can also see there still is a significant repayment amount in this coming fiscal year, in the current fiscal year, 2020. That's because the Infrastructure Ontario, one of the Infrastructure Ontario loans is due in the current year. Although the $195,000 compares fairly similar to your 2019, where you had $179,000 of principal repayment. So not a big change, but as you can see, that number will drop off significantly in 2021 in the next several years, down to about $77,000 per year. I'm back on page 3, the statement of financial position again. Overall consolidated surplus of $8,857,000 compared to $8,218,000 last year. The majority, of course, of that surplus is the investment in tangible capital assets that has value, long-term live assets, so it has significant long-term value. Your cash position did increase at the end of the year compared to the prior year. It increased from $472,000 to $979,000. On page 4, just a couple of quick highlights. This is the statement of operations. These figures, of course, are analyzed very carefully. Your staff do a significant amount of work in terms of preparing annual budgets, and then analyzing those variances on an ongoing basis through the course of the year. This is summary information here, of course, over the 12-month period, comparing budget to actual results. The surplus at the end of the accounting surplus of $639,000, as you can see at the bottom of the page, that's the full accrual-based surplus. So that's different from your municipal budgeting, of course, because capital assets are expensed in your municipal budgeting and they're capitalized. So you have significant investment in capital assets in the current year. So you would expect on a full accrual basis to show a significant municipal surplus, which you did, of $639,000. Turning to pages 7, 8, and 9. These are the notes to your financial statements. We review, these are the accounting policies and processes, if you will, that are followed to prepare your financial statements. We review the appropriateness of these policies every year. We review, and these include things such as, you can see, amortization rates for capital assets. They include revenue recognition. And we assess the reasonableness, if you will, of the appropriateness of these policies, not only in the context of what our book of rules says, but also what other similar municipalities and townships do. So in other words, we look to see that your policies are appropriate and consistent with other similar municipalities, so that you're being measured and you're presenting your information in a method that is comparable to other municipalities. In the year, there were no changes to the accounting policies for the municipality. Page 9, some information on note number 2, information on contributions to the District of Parry Sound, DSAB, the North Bay District Health Unit, and then the Home for the Aged. On page 10, information on the amounts that you collect on behalf of school boards. And again, we review that those amounts are both collected and paid. And you can see in note number 3 that at the end of the year, it was virtually a nil balance. So you had collected $977,000 and paid out $984,000. And so $316 was the reconciling amount at the end of the year. You also hold trust funds. Trust funds are not you have a legal obligation to hold those trust funds, but they are not funds of the municipality, so they're not included in the financial statements. On page 12, we have the information in respect of the landfill site that you own, and also the Alts Road landfill site that you lease. Again, there's a triannual study. This has resulted in changes in the landfill expense, if you will, when that study gets updated. Right now, we were still in, these numbers still come from the study that was done in 2018. So there was no significant changes here other than the normal amortization as you use up the capacity of the landfill sites and accrue for the post-closure costs related to that. Again, in terms of the details of these numbers, those are amounts, of course, that staff that provide you with detailed analysis, and if there are detailed questions, I would suggest that they'll probably appropriately direct it to them. But that would be the highlights, if you will, of our audit. Again, we'd like to thank the staff. They worked with us to help everyone get through this audit, given the circumstances that we all find ourselves in this year. Overall, a healthy financial situation. Everything sort of is within the measurable norms, if you will. Investment in capital assets exceeding amortization, so no net sort of impairment of assets there. And that would be my highlight comments. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Thank you very much, Carl, for that report. Councillors, questions for our auditors?
Yeah, Carl, Councillor Lamb. Any areas of concern at all within the audit? And secondly, could you comment on our debt level as of the end of the year?
Okay. So in respect of concerns in terms of the audit, Our standard process, we're required to issue a post-audit letter. In that post-audit letter, it would have any issues or concerns that we would have, and we have none to report in the current year.
Thank you.
Okay. Secondly, in terms of sort of the more subjective question in terms of debt levels, your debt repayment amount requirements are well below the municipal restriction levels, if you will, in terms of the ceilings. Those ceilings are based upon net revenue minus net debt costs of the organization, so you fall fully within those. Obviously, if interest rates were significantly higher, you would feel the impact of the debt far more than you would otherwise, so that's certainly helpful. The challenge, of course, is that, things like bridges cost an awful lot of money to build, and it costs even a lot more money to repair. And funding of those types of capital expenditures often it's difficult to predict. Although you do have work on your long-term capital plan, but it's difficult to predict, and it's even more difficult to secure contributions from other levels of government to replace some of those assets. So that is the challenge. So it's a tough trade-off. I think when I look at your overall financial position and look at the debt service costs that you have, your taxation rates have been relatively consistent, and you've been able to fund your capital improvements and repairs by taking on the debt. So, if they on balance, the system seems to be I'd call it in balance, but of course the pressure is there that you don't run into unanticipated major capital repair or improvement situations, because those, of course, are so difficult to fund.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, Joe McEwen.
Go ahead, please, Councillor McEwen.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate your report. It's very productive and very easy to follow. Any comments on moving forward into the next year, through this year with the COVID-19 kicking around? I know when we read reports from other municipalities, some have had to defer things and make changes, really significant changes. We seem to have gone, touch wood, but I'd say pretty well off in Whitestone to my feel for it. Any comments on moving forward with this in the air?
Yeah, it's a challenge, and some of the larger municipalities struggle more with the fact that they provide a significant amount of seasonal programs, and those programs have program staff costs associated and program revenues, and so that has certainly caused some exasperation in some of the larger towns. I think the Prime Minister announced today, and then it shifts so frequently, which is clearly a challenge. Announced sort of a quicker payment, if you will, of the gas tax transfer amounts this year. I guess in the long term, what we're seeing is what it feels like is the construction sector and Whitestone. You're in an area where new development and construction is significant, and perhaps this will be the type of thing that will basically help the local economy work its way through. I say we certainly have seen an uptick in real estate activity over the last 3 weeks now. I think just the issues with the issues in Toronto and the general the far lesser number of cases that we've had up here, it certainly appears that we will get the benefit of economic investment, maybe not in the next 2 months, but over the next year to 2 years to 3 years, as everyone sort of looks at the benefits of being in a less populated area as opposed to sort of the density in the large city. So I like to feel overall that our areas are can be bullish as a result of that, but in the short term, of course, it's, there's still the short-term issues in terms of costs that are on board, and how our programs available, or the program revenues to deal with some of those. But those are, I think those result in some specific short-term decisions in respect of programs that can or can't be run, and costs that should or shouldn't be incurred.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you.
Are there other questions? Well, perhaps I might make one myself, which just I'm curious if you had any comments about our internal controls.
So, as I mentioned, we do our audit in two phases. One is what we call it an interim audit, but I mean it's an audit of your controls and your procedures. But I liken an accounting system of controls to the, if you will, the way a roof and a house is built. At the end of the day, nothing is perfect, but what you do is you create a bunch of controls and procedures that such that the water doesn't come into your house, that it drains away, if you will. And accounting processes are exactly the same way. No accounting process system is perfect. It's impossible. There's too many transactions for a system to be perfect. But they're designed to catch the high majority of areas where errors could potentially happen. And that's what we look at. That's what we evaluate. And your systems and processes are certainly similar to other municipalities that are your size and with the limited internal human resources that you have available. So, as I say, we did not come across any breakdowns in the controls or systems as part of the testing that we did. Are systems perfect? No, they can never be perfect because you're limited, say, with the resources that you have in hand, the number of people that you have. You just can't afford to have 5 people checking 3 people's other work. That's just not economically practical. So, on balance, your systems are appropriate for the size and type of organization that you run.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Are there questions from any other councillors? Going once? Okay. Sorry. Did I hear somebody getting ready with one? No? Okay, just a little background noise, I guess. With that, I'd like to once again thank Carl and Andrew for joining us and for answering our questions and presenting the report. And I guess if there are no further questions, we can move on to the next, move on to the planning items in our agenda. So thank you, gentlemen. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you very much now. Bye-bye.
Leaving conference.
Carl and Andrew Pahofko.
Leaving conference.
So our mystery guest also left the conference, apparently. Someone who did not wish to identify himself or herself. That brings us to item 6.1, which is has to do with some conditions on a consent by the Nashes on Gooseneck Lake. And I don't know if I was going to say I don't know if anybody is going to present this, but essentially, if I can just kind of try to set the stage for this briefly, what has happened is that one of the conditions that the municipality negotiated, if you will, with the Nashes prior to an LPAT hearing that was called in regards to this. It had to do with establishment of an access point, and which consisted of a docking area and a parking area for the purchasers of the proposed 3 lots that were to be created by this consent. And there has been a bit of back and forth over the past, I suppose, year or so to come up with an appropriate mechanism for satisfying that condition. And most recently, we have received from the Nashes the material that is in your package tonight, which identifies a proposed alternate access point. They had proposed one previously that did not look like it to us, like it would be, and maybe not to them either, that it would be workable. And they have now proposed an alternative. It's on the same basic property, but on another part of it. And as you can see there, it involves the. Could I ask whoever's got their mic open to mute it if you're not speaking, please? Sounds like a fire alarm or something.
No, my apologies. It's Councillor Lamb. That's my hockey red light that's decided to go off in the middle of the spring. So anyway, sorry. The Toronto Maple Leafs must have scored. I don't know. Anyway,
I was going to say, what's the score? Okay. All right. Thank you. Anyway, this arrangement involves a place to put a dock and a place to park vehicles for as I said, for the future owners of the 3 new lots that are being created. So. And you will see that later on when we come out of committee of the whole. We have we have a motion to deal with this. But essentially, what the Nashes have asked us is to indicate if this arrangement will be acceptable to the municipality. The CAO clerk and I have, and our chief building official have been involved in looking at this, and to the best of our ability, to determine, it looks as if it will meet the requirements. I would point out that there are some other conditions, of course, that have to be satisfied, in regards to parkland dedication fees, 911 addressing, and various other things that were part of there were other conditions attached to the original access point. So those would still have to be satisfied in due course. But what the Nashes were asking us to do was to indicate whether or not this proposed arrangement, if they carry it out, would satisfy the condition. And so that's why this is on the agenda this evening. So I will ask our CAO clerk if she has any other comments about this that she wants to make just by way of introduction, and then I will ask the Nashes who are on the phone with us tonight if they have any comments that they want to make.
Patricia Allen.
Okay, so Michelle, do you have anything to add to that introduction?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, you covered everything quite nicely. As Council knows, this is a project that the Nashes have been working on for some time. We had considered giving them an extension, and I think Council agreed to a 1-year extension because they were going to work with M&R on the initial access point, and have since come up with with the option that's before council. It appears that it would accommodate the requirement of the LPAT order, and there is one caveat, and I state that in the memo, that it's a long 200-meter walk from the parking area to the docking facilities. But that does not preclude that the access point, which is narrow at 5 meters, could be upgraded to, because from a practical perspective, people want to be able to drive to their dock, unload their groceries, their belongings, all the things that you take with to your cottage, and then park somewhere in a safe place. So it's a bit of a long, not necessarily convenient access point, but it does comply with the LPAT order. So that's probably all I have to add at this point. Other than, as noted in my memo, the CBO Tyler Earn did actually physically go see the location, and it is appropriate for a dock location.
Okay, thank you. I will ask Scott or Garth if you have any comments that you want to add at this point, or if you want to simply wait and see what questions councillors might have, we can certainly give you the opportunity to respond to any of those if that's appropriate. So whatever you like. Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so I'll open the floor to councillors.
Are you there, George?
Yep, I am.
I was muted. Sorry about that. I was talking but didn't realize I was still muted. If you don't mind, I can say a couple things, and then if any councillors or yourself, Mr. Mayor, has any questions, that's what I'm here for. So we've been working hard with Michelle and the staff there trying to work through this other access point. And for the parking area, we have done some work by applying some gravel, and we've tried to work on the paperwork for the docking, just to let you know that we're actively working on both those items, trying to get it to a point that we can get this hopefully cleared in the next very short time frame. And just when you were speaking before, George, I know you'd asked about the parkland dedication fee, or you mentioned again about the 911 address. Just so that all the councillors are aware that the 5126 agreement, which was one of the conditions, it was signed back in June of last year, and the parkland dedication fee was paid in July of last year. That was condition 3. And condition 4, the 911 addressing, it was completed in January of 2019, so almost 16 months ago. And condition 5, the payment of fees, it was also completed in July of 2019. So basically the very last item is simply getting clearance that this access point would work, in the hopes that a letter of clearance could be provided to the planning board and the lots can get registered. So this is kind of the very last hurdle, I'll call it, that we're trying to work through to get done so that we can get this cleaned up in very short order without needing extensions or anything happening on the file. So anybody has questions, I'm here for you guys to answer.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yep.
Questions from councillors?
Mr. Mayor, Joe McEwen, I just have one question.
Go ahead.
Probably not worth asking, but anyway, I'll ask it. And that's the parking at the top versus down by the lake. Scott, is there potential of getting a turnaround down there so people can get closer in the future? Just curious.
Well, we picked a spot that we thought would work for vehicles coming in and also for neighboring properties so that it doesn't disrupt their views. And as I'm sure you know, you aren't allowed to have parking areas within, I believe it's 50 feet of the lake, but I think you guys try to make it 30 meters away for septics and buildings. So it's really almost 100 feet away at the closest, right? And
200 meters away is about a 2-minute walk, according to our plan, or less than 2-minute walk. And these properties, would be marketed. People would know what that length of a walkway is. And as for the width at 5 meters, you guys only require your driveways to be a minimum of 4 meters. So we made it larger than that, knowing it's not going to be, like a 2-lane road. And I actually was curious, and I measured Highway 520 last time I was up, and 1 lane of Highway 520 near McGee Lake Road is about 4.7 meters wide. So this is actually wider than the paved section of Highway 520 that was proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Yeah, Councillor Lamb.
Go ahead.
This, we've been working on this a long time. I guess I'm pleased that we've moved off the other point, which, seeing pictures of where the initial dock was going to be, I could never see how it was ever going to work. So I'm happy that it's moved over. I share Councillor McEwen's sort of concern of 200 meters away in terms of parking, but you're marketing the properties, and people know that that's what they have to use in terms of their ingress and egress to the properties. So, but I just want to make sure that it's viable enough that they're not going to use a default position of the gooseneck landing, right? None of us want that, because we'll hear the political heat, and it won't be healthy for anyone. So if 200 meters is what it is, and it can't be moved any quicker, I would hope that someone will be able, in those 5 meters, and it will be in a type of shape that people can drive their car down to where the dock area is and unload, versus having to unload into something 200 meters away and lugging it down a 200-meter pathway or something to the dock. So, Scott, can you confirm that it will, they'll be able to take a car down to where the docking area is?
Yeah. So right now, I'll answer kind of 3 smaller questions there. The access point is very deep. You can put a boat there very easy. That's what the building inspector confirmed. Same for the parking area. We've already done some work there. And as for this 5 meters, when we're there looking at it with the building inspector, you could walk over it now. You could drive an ATV over it right now without having to do anything. So it's not like there's, big rock cliffs and stuff like that over it, right? It's like your typical ground that's undulating up and down a little bit, nothing more than that. So I think that answers your question, or I hope it does. It's not like you have a
would I be able to take a car if I were coming up to my cottage that I'm going to build on these new lots and drive it over the terrain with all packed up with whatever I have in it to go down to where the docking area is my question? Or would I have to put it into an ATV and somehow transport it that way?
You could drive in a pickup truck or something like that. You wouldn't want to take a Honda Civic, right? Like many cottage roads the way it is right now, right? But the goal would be, of course, when marketing it, that people would be able to do what they'd like to make sure more improvements could be done to it, right? Michelle and I had spoken to that a little bit already.
Okay. The second concern or that I have is that you can have a dock and you can have a dock. You've got 3 properties over there. So you sell all 3. I would hope there's more than a 10 by 10 dock. People, again, are going to want to come out at the end of the weekend or the end of the week or something. And I assume put their boat or their pontoon boat or something at the dock and leave it there until they return the next weekend. So how is that? Is the dock going to be big enough to hold boats for 3 properties, or is there any requirements for the size of the dock? And I realize there are dock restrictions in terms of setbacks and sizes and all that kind of stuff, but they're pretty good in our community. So is it going to be big enough that 3 people can, or 3 lots can adequately share a dock?
And would you like I can answer that for you?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So
absolutely, yeah.
In the paperwork that we'd tried to supply, it's I'm just trying to read the size here, 8 by 20. So I think to answer your question, yes, that will very easily accommodate 3 boats. It would accommodate more than that. So no, it's not like an 8 by 8 or an 8 by 10. So quite a long, at 20 feet long, it would probably be, if I'm sure you're all familiar with docks, but at the end of the day, there'd kind of be 2 docks connected to each other, kind of 2 10-foot docks, if that makes any sense.
You're not really going to be able to put, say, 3 pontoon boats on that, are you?
I know the dock that we have now, you can put 3 18-foot boats on it very, very easily and still have room for an aluminum boat on one side. So depending how how big your boats are and everything, right? And then it could always be extended. There's more than ample space for future docks to go in to make it longer.
So the people themselves could apply for and extend the docks.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Of course they could.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think that's all my questions.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? All right. I don't hear any, so I think we have concluded the discussion part of this particular item.
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
Just having thank you. Sorry. Having said that, so if someone will have a legal right of way over this property to access their property. So I would ask our CAO, there would be no restrictions, would there, if an owner of one of these properties wanted to extend that dock? They wouldn't be saying, oh, you have to go back to the owner of the property and seek permission to extend that dock from 20 feet to 30 feet or something. Or would they, as by having a right of way, would they have the ability to work within normal constraints with respect to that dock?
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. I don't have an answer for your question. I would think that was the case, and in fact, we'll make sure the easement documents for the right-of-way indicate such. I just have to make sure that it's certainly possible to indicate within the easement documents that those folks that have deeded access have the right to the upgrade to put gravel and to build a bit of a road so that a vehicle could get up and down.
And to upgrade the dock if they want to.
About the dock, yeah.
Yeah, as long as that's in the documents, that I think would be the proper thing.
Yeah, and if you wouldn't mind if I might answer that too, Michelle and Mr. Mayor, that we wouldn't have anything in the easement or paperwork, whatever you call it, right-of-way paperwork, that would exclude somebody from doing dock improvements. So I think the answer to Councillor Lamb's question, as long as it would meet building code for length or width or whatever it would be no problem, right? We wouldn't have a restriction in there saying you can't have a dock or you can't extend the dock or anything like that, right? So
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. If we're done with the questions, then I'd entertain a motion to reconvene to the regular council meeting. We're, as I mentioned earlier, we're...
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, who? Go ahead.
Councillor Woods?
Yes, go ahead.
Just one question. The size of the parking area, I'm looking at the motions, and the size they're saying to be gravelled and clear of trees and brush is 477 meters squared. Is that not kind of big for 3 lots?
No. It's 477 square meters, which is the area of the, so that would be a 20 by 20 meter space. So 60 feet by 60 feet, in round numbers, would be 400 square meters, right? That's the area.
Okay, but that
am I wrong? Am I correct? I'll ask the CAO clerk or the NASHs to confirm, but that is the size of, on the drawing, of the area of the parking.
And I can answer that for you, and then, or Michelle, if you'd like to answer it, then I can comment. It doesn't matter. Would you like to go first, Michelle?
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, so parts 4 and 5, I think you'd said it was 400 and something meters. That was the way that the surveyors had laid it out. It's actually in excess of what it would need to be. I think, if I remember correct from our stuff from several years ago, it's 100 square meters per property. So some of that area, I would assume, would probably not need to be cleared. And the parking area could be made to accommodate that 300 square meters very easily where it is. I think it was the way the surveyors probably put in pins and stuff like that, so you came up with a larger area, which is in excess of the size of the area that's required. If I'm correct, it's 100 square meters, so we have more like 150 there, which is more than enough space.
Did that answer your question, Councillor Woods?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, if it was 100 square meters per, then we don't do we really want them clearing 477 meters worth of trees and graveling the whole thing? That's what I was lost on that part there. If we wanted to clear the entire area and gravel the entire area, but if it's just for what the pins were put in for the survey, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, can I get a motion to reconvene to the regular council meeting, please?
I'll make that motion, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I can second that, Councillor Woods.
Thank you. The Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby reconvene into regular council at 7:22 p.m. Anyone opposed to doing that? All right then, hearing no opposition, that motion is carried. That allows us then to come to matters arising from committee of the whole, and as we've noted previously, there is a motion here, suggested motion, that I'll be looking for a mover and seconder for. I'm going to read it to you just for the record, and I apologize, it's a bit long, but whereas the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal decision in case number PL180493 in respect of consent B02/2018W ordered that the following items require a letter of compliance from the municipality. Condition 2I was that the applicants create a registered right-of-way over a mainland lot to be used as a dedicated access point for the owners of the proposed severed 3 lots, which will be upgraded to accommodate the parking of vehicles and the creation of a docking area. And 2, II, that the mainland access lot be zoned appropriately for the proposed use. And 2, III, that the owners of the severed 3 lots and their guests not park their vehicles or boats overnight at the public landing. So those are the conditions that we were dealing with. We were just dealing with. And whereas a Planscape memorandum dated April 24th, 2020, entitled Alternate Access Point, Gooseneck Lake, Municipality of Whitestone, included in the agenda package for the June 1st, 2020 council meeting, has proposed an access point, parking area, and docking area. And whereas Scott Nash, in an email to the Municipality of Whitestone dated Wednesday, May the 6th, 2020, wrote, "We would be willing to put some gravel down on the parking area and install a dock. We cannot, however, agree to do this work before knowing that the municipality has confirmed that the site we have proposed is suitable to clear the condition and that a dock permit from the municipality will be granted. Once we have the municipality's confirmation, we would then undertake, subject to COVID-19 restraints, to complete the agreed-to work for the parking area and dock. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone supports the proposed access point, parking area, and docking area as proposed in the above reference landscape memorandum and agrees to the provision of the necessary letter of compliance, subject to Parts 4 and 5 of the draft 42R plan being approximately 477 square meters, being cleared of trees and brush and gravel applied to accommodate a parking area, and the installation of a dock at the proposed docking area." So that is the motion. Can I get a mover and seconder, please?
I'll move
that.
Councillor McEwen.
So Councillor McEwen moved, and Councillor Gore Matthews, are you seconding?
Sure.
Any discussion of this motion? All right, I will call the question, and I'll call it as a roll call. So, Councillor Gore Matthews.
Yes.
Councillor Joe Lamb.
Yes.
Councillor McEwen.
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
And I'm also in favor. So that motion is passed unanimously. Thank you to everybody. Now.
Okay, thank you.
We can move from there to item 9, which is our consent agenda. And the only items that we have there are the minutes of the regular council meeting on May 19th, 2020, and the list of unfinished business. I'm just getting the paper here so I can I'm looking for a motion. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive and or approve the items contained in the consent agenda dated June 1st, 2020. And I get a mover and seconder, please.
I'll move it, Councillor Lambert. Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Seconded by?
I'll move Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Is there any item Well, you know what? We have a Commanders Rising when it's finished. So I'll just ask, there were no errors or omissions noted in the minutes for May 19th? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone opposed to approving these items? All right, then that motion is carried. Are there any questions or comments arising from those items in the consent agenda that anyone wants to raise? All right, thank you. I will record that there are none. And that brings us then to accounts payable. Could I get a motion, please, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby approve payroll in the amount of $21,939.79 for payment?
I'll move. Councillor Woods.
A pretty simple one this month. Yes, thank you. A seconder, please.
I'll second, Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Any discussion about this? We usually don't end up discussing the payroll, right? But is there anything anybody wants to raise?
Well, the only point I make, Councillor Lamb, is that I'm working off a hard copy. And I didn't receive any accounts payable, so I don't know what the 21,900 is. I'm certainly not.
That's payroll.
Oh, it's all
That's the payroll.
Oh,
it's
okay,
all payroll.
probably,
Yeah, we don't have any accounts payable. That's the.
Okay, well then I certainly don't have any questions on that. So thank you.
All right. Okay. Can I assume that there's no objection then? Anyone? No one has any objection to that. As we normally don't get into the details of the payroll. All right then. That brings us to item 11, number 11.1. In fact, 11 is bylaws, and this relates to a piece of good news that we received very recently, that FedNor has come through with the funding that had been sought towards the construction of the addition to the library. And so what this is looking for is authority to enter into an agreement with the government to receive this funding, which I suspect we all want to do. But anyway,
I will gladly make the motion.
All right, Councillor Lamb moves. Is there a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. I'm going to read it just for the record in the minutes. The motion is that bylaw. The motion that was just made and seconded is that bylaw 30-2020, being a bylaw to enter into agreement with Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Canada, as represented by the Minister of Industry, for the purposes of receiving FedNor funding to support the expansion and construction of the Whitestone Library and Technology Center, be read a first and second time this first day of June 2020, and further read a third time, passed and properly signed and sealed this first day of June 2020. So that's the motion we're voting on. I guess I will ask, is there any discussion first?
Yes, Councillor Lamb. Obviously, as you've said, Mr. Mayor, this is tremendous good news, and I think as a council and as a community, I think we should be elated that we've got a project like this in times like this that I mean, just think a small community like ours has sought out funding and received it in the amount of $300,000 from the two levels of government. To get $150,000 for a small town library like ours, a small hamlet library like ours, a municipality like ours is a tremendous achievement. But even as importantly, this is the first time that FedNor has ever in their history given any funds to a library. And I think it's a testament to the hard work, and I've seen it because my wife's been involved in it. But the hard work of Michelle and Pat from a staff standpoint, and my wife Kathy and Lori and Peggy from the library board, who collaboratively worked so hard on this. And I think special praise to Michelle, who absolutely, I think we being the library board and others would have been happy to apply for, $50,000 or something from the federal government. But she pushed us to go to match the provincial levels and she kept doggedly on this project and with people within FedNor and people within the community development in Parry Sound. I forget the chap's name, but anyway, they all worked so hard and it came through. And I think, like any project, it's a little bit of good luck that we're shovel ready in a time that the government wants to move forward and maybe start to get us a little bit back on stream. And we're also lucky that we're able to get the project going so quickly when the library would be closed anyway, and the government has allowed this project to go forward, and we can start construction where they're not able to do construction sort of in the private industry or weren't able to a month ago. So, like any tremendous project like this, there's a little bit of good luck and a little bit of good management. But anyway, I want to especially thank, because I've seen all the hard work personally of all the people I mentioned, and it's a tremendous achievement for our community. So I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Any other comments? Okay, I think I will call the roll on this one, just for the record. Councillor Gorham-Matthews.
Yes.
Councillor Lamb.
Yes.
Councillor McEwen.
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
And I am also in favor of that, so that motion is carried unanimously, and we will execute the necessary agreement to get that money into our hot little hands, as they say. Okay. So we have nothing under the heading of staff reports. There is an item which follows on from the one we just discussed relating to the library project. Sorry, that's number 13.2. I'm getting out of order here. 13.1 is COVID-19 pandemic and related matters. You know what? If you don't mind, let's just do 13.2. We'll take it out of order since we're here already, and then we'll come back and talk about COVID-19 and capital road projects. the suggestion has been made that some of the items that were, as you recall, the cost, the quotations that we received, or the bids that we received to construct this addition to the library, came in at higher amounts than had been budgeted, and so there were some, if you like, some tweaks made to remove a few items totaling about $42,000 from the, or $42,625, in fact, from the project in order to reduce the cost a little bit. The suggestion has been made that these items be put back into the contract, and you can see them there. There's patio stones, gravel for the driveway, soffit detail, and a steel roof and some additional insulation. There is also another issue that has arisen in the meantime. As you're aware, if you've been by there, there is work had commenced to excavate for a basement, and the excavator hit bedrock. So there is now some discussion going on about what that represents as an additional cost to the project and so on. So I don't know, maybe the clerk wishes to, or the CIO clerk wishes to add some comments to what I mentioned first about these various items, and then I'll see if someone wants to make a motion in regards to them. So, Michelle, do you have any other comments you want to raise?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you noted, there was a number of items that we thought we would remove from the contract before it was originally awarded in an effort to save some money. As you know, it came in a little bit over budget unexpectedly. The steel roof actually was never even considered in the first round of discussions, but it's certainly of interest to the library, what I call committee. So there's a small group of people on the library board that have been having oversight of the project and the details of the project as we move forward. So the thought was, with the FedNor funding and the fact that the municipality already budgeted enough money just in case we didn't get FedNor funding, that these components could be put back into the project. I checked with the CBO in terms of the insulation options, and even though without these options, it certainly meets building code. In his experience, that there would be some longevity to the reduction in heating costs if these insulation options were put back into the contract. So I did that on his advisement. And to your comment about hitting bedrock. We don't know what the costs are, what the solution is. I do have a meeting tomorrow with the contractor and the architect, and they will have by that point have costs to blast the bedrock in order to create the basement that's required for the library or that the library folks want, and it makes sense for storage. There's a couple of other options that may be on the table. But I won't have all the answers until our meeting tomorrow, and even then there may be some decisions to be made, and what those costs would be. We do have a contingency in place, $50,000 as council recalls, but at this point I don't know how much of that contingency we would need to manage the bedrock that's been encountered. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, councillors, you have a suggested motion with respect to that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone receives memo dated June 1st, 2020 regarding tender 2020-02 and proposed additions to the contract to the Whitestone Hagerman Memorial Public Library Project and FedNor funding notification for information, and that the Council does hereby approve the addition of the following items to the contract in the amount of $42,625 plus HST. and there are the 5 items that we've discussed there, one of which I guess has already been added back in any case, but they total $42,625. Does someone wish to move this motion to be done immediately, or do you wish to wait until you hear what the additional cost of the is involved in dealing with this bedrock situation in the basement?
Mr. Mayor, could I make a comment, please?
You may.
On the steel roof, I had asked the CAO if a study had been done on the safety of snow coming off the steel roof. I was involved with the school board years ago, and there were some major snow movement issues around public places, and schools were not exception to that. No exceptions to that. Snow coming down on walkways and decks, and in some cases back then it was coming down and pushing in garage doors and even breaking windows and things of that nature. But certainly the safety aspect of people going into the building and being around the building from a snow movement off a steel roof, it frightens me big time. So I had asked the CAO if that had been considered and if there was a report on safety with respect to putting a steel roof on the building. I know longevity with steel was looked at really seriously back in my days with the school board too, but unfortunately there were so many issues with the steel roofs afterwards that it cost $1 to move forward, partly because of the safety issues. So I'm wondering if Michelle could comment on that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Mm-hmm. I did reach out to our architect, but I haven't received an answer as of yet. So that, I think our discussion was on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. And I had hoped to have an answer for you, but I don't. Sorry, I don't have anything to add at this point.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Lamb, I hadn't thought of that aspect. I think Councillor McEwen brings up a very good point. I bought a garage that has a steel roof on it, and obviously the all in all, having a steel roof in terms of overall costs over the next 30 or 40 years, I think is the way to go. But I've had to make a walkway in the wintertime, which is far away from that structure, and it's sort of a barn type of roof, if you can envision that on my garage. But I couldn't have it in a certain area because that's where all the snow came off, right? So I had to push out further. So I think that's a very legitimate concern. So I think in terms of the roof, I'd like to hear back before I would commit to it. I'd like to hear back from our architect, and this could come at the next meeting, as to ways to mitigate any concerns that way, or not. And if there isn't, then we should probably go with a regular roof. But we need to hear back, I think, on that. I think the other things are, what do they say, penny wise, pound foolish when it comes to the insulation, because this is the insulation they're talking about in the current building. So if we can put insulation, it's obviously going to save us in terms of heating costs over the years. And this is a building that will be used obviously year round. So I think that's a wise investment. And the other things are really, gravel and patio stones and soffit detail are small things. So I think we can go ahead with those. But the roof is a concern, and to be frank, I hadn't thought of that until Councillor McEwen brought it up. In terms of the bedrock, I think we have to wait to see what the costs are against to blast that against the contingency that's there, which is $50,000, and that's why the contingency was put in there. But other options that could be looked at are to simply have a step or two or three up into the extension, if you will, and then make a ramp in terms of handicap accessibility, so that you would still have a basement, if you will, but it would be up from the top of the bedrock, if you will, and it would be a bit of a, I don't know what you call it, a side level or something, sort of. So that could be looked at also as a potential option, which might be more or least or less expensive, I guess. So, but I'd hate to see us give up, the badly needed storage in our community that we so desperately need. So I think the whole idea of the blasting and the rest will have to be left to another meeting. But in terms of what we're faced with here, other than the steel roof, I think certainly I have no problem with the other items in here. So thank you. That's the end of my comments.
Okay, thank you. I guess my question at this point would be, there isn't particular urgency with this, because these are all things that would happen later on in the project. Are you content to defer this to the next meeting when we have more information, or rather than piecemealing the motion or this table tonight? Are you content to do that if we bring it back at the next meeting with the missing information?
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay.
If nobody makes a motion, that's, I guess, what we're going to do then. Is that is there does anyone feel an urgency to proceed right tonight? Okay, I will make a note then that the motion that the matter has been deferred until the next meeting, and we will bring it back. The item 13.1 was an item dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and related matters that we usually have on our agenda. And I wanted to, sorry, I'm just pulling something else up on my screen here, which was some possible things that we might want to talk about here. I just have to find it, that's all. Apologize for the delay while I click through this here, but anyway, there are, you know what? I'm going to, while I'm bringing it up on the screen, I'm going to ask the CAO clerks to comment. She participated in a meeting with other CAOs today. We're talking about things that they were, in the sort of ongoing saga of what do we open up. I have it in front of me, but why don't I, Michelle, if you don't mind, do you want to comment on that, or would you have to find it now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I have it in front of me, and I actually resent it to you just in case you didn't find it.
No, I've got it now.
Multitude. So what I can share is that the CAOs, we usually have a phone meeting every Monday, and it's basically related to COVID, and we try to connect with what each other is doing, and sometimes it's different, and sometimes the same. The discussion today was on beaches. Many of the municipalities are opening their playgrounds because that's now permitted, and that's not so much of a problem because signs, may or may not be put up that it'll be up to the public to do the physical distancing appropriately. It's a question of, do you open up the washrooms? And if you open up washrooms, is there an obligation for extensive cleaning and sanitizing? There's been one message that Public Health Unit recommended 4 times a day, 7 days a week, and that's an almost impossible task to consider. McDougall, for instance, is opening up their washrooms, but they've put up a sign that says use at your own risk. Parry Sound is somewhat undecided. Carling really only has porta potties, and their position is you kind of use those at your own risk anyway. And the other municipalities were either unknown or undecided. So it's one of those questions that Whitestone has to decide: do we open up our beach and our playground, and when? And do we open the washrooms? The thinking being, if people are on the beach or at the playground, there probably will be a need for washrooms with small children, and you want to make sure that if there are no washrooms, then you may be cleaning up in places that you wish you hadn't. And so that's one of the discussions that we've had. And the other discussion is opening up the office for the public. McDougall has made a firm commitment, for instance, to open up their office to the public on July 7th, and that's with some protocols in place. They're bringing all their staff back in, and most of their staff were working remotely about the middle of June, which is not an issue that we have to deal with here. So we talked about beaches, washrooms, and opening the offices today, and those were the topics of discussion. And as you can tell, each municipality thinks about it a little differently, but it'll certainly the beaches is something we'll have to think about as the summer progresses and it gets warm, and people will want to use it and may use it anyway, whether there's tape there or not.
Michelle, did I hear you say that you can't open playgrounds, can you? The playground apparatus and stuff?
I have to double check the latest essential services list. Definitely beaches, and some municipalities indicated that some CEOs today indicated they're opening playground equipment. So I'll have to double check on that. I actually didn't do that before the meeting today, and I'd meant to.
I thought that was still out of bounds, but maybe I'm wrong.
So I think, I mean, we don't have to deal with this tonight, but my comment would be that I think as we get to July 1st, we will see, especially if we have hot weather, and I think I think we can expect some more hot weather soon, that people are going to be really wanting to, get on the water and near the water, and I think we'll face pressure to reopen the beaches and playgrounds. So it's something to think about. My own view is that you can't open them without opening the washrooms too, and we would have to have some protocol in place to try to keep them clean. And I think we would probably want to try to want to do some things to. We do have some signs up already, but we right now when I say our beaches, of course, the one in Dunchurch, there is because that beach is unsupervised, there's a sign there that says use at your own risk already. It's there for some time. I think the other concern I would have is that people still continue to, who do decide to use it, don't do what they would normally do in the past, in past summers, which is, all hang out together around the picnic table or something like that. That they've got to try and space themselves out a little more, both those in the water and those on the land that are watching them. And so, but that's an issue that we'll have to consider. The other one, by the way, that in a similar vein, I started to receive a comment from a couple of people about the landfill hours. As somebody coming and saying, "Hey, gee, how come my landfill site's only open 2 days a week?" And I explained that to them, what the rationale was. As we get to the summer, there may be more pressure to provide some additional landfill hours, and we will have some additional staff because we will have 4 students presumably working this summer, and so there is a possibility to, whether we want to go back to the hours that we had before or something else for the summer, but some other arrangement, but we would have staff resources to enable us to follow the current protocols and still have additional dump days for people. But if that demand materializes, as I think it will, so those are things that we could think about, I guess. I don't know. Are there any comments about either of those from council, or is anything anybody feels strongly that we should be moving on right now?
Mr. Mayor, I think by the time we have our next meeting on the 15th, and thinking toward July 1st, I'm thinking of the beach, for instance. We'll still be gathering information, of course, up to that point from the ministry, and it's looking more and more like they're relaxing on certain things in the recreation vein. I noticed Carling, they've published that they've opened up their landfill to receive more and more items. They're not receiving money, however, they're receiving ID, name, address, and they will send out a bill for whatever the respective item is and charge would be, but they are not handling the money directly. And from what I understand, they're also looking at receiving some additional information or items at their landfill. So I think it's something we should consider also, especially if we have the staff available. Summer hours certainly will be getting more pressure pretty quickly in terms of people wanting to get to the landfills. If we could just get our landfills in shape to receive certain hard things like furniture type issues or materials, we could gradually start working toward that, because we're really going to get overwhelmed with that when and if we open up to receive that later on in the summer. Something we should be thinking toward anyways, I think. So I don't know if we want to go for extended hours and summer hours, looking at, say, pick a date like July the 1st or something, or just what? Just a comment.
Well,
okay. Any other?
I'll go next. When it comes to the beaches and stuff, I guess I think we're heading towards obviously opening them. Whether a lot of it's going to be weather driven, right? If suddenly it's 30 degrees Celsius like it was a week ago or a few days ago, there's going to be more and more pressure to open the beach and that sort of stuff. But I don't know. I haven't looked at the weather forecast for the next couple of weeks. So we seem to flip all over the place from 30 degrees to frost warnings, right? So that'll have a lot to do with it. Certainly, it appears that if I'm hearing, and I think I heard today that Ford is thinking of extending the state of emergency and a group of you can only group in 5, etc., till June the 29th, which would say to me that, and I thought he would have changed it this weekend, or this week, but anyway, it appears like he's not going to. So probably heading towards July 1st to open up the beaches, for instance, the Dunchurch Beach And I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. You can't open the beach without having the washrooms open, right? And you post a sign, use at your own risk, and social distance and all that kind of stuff. So, and then as far as the playground, it would be open, and I guess I assume by that point you can use the playground apparatus and that sort of thing. If we can't, then that'll have to remain out of bounds. So, when it comes to the landfill sites, I thought last week we had, or when we had our meeting on last Wednesday, I thought that we had decided that we were, on top of, the hours were going to remain, 2 days at each site, but we were going to accept brush at Alls, one load, sort of on their honor, and there wasn't going to be any exchange of money, but we were going to try and implement that within a few days. So that should be in operation now, as far as I know. But when I talked to the landfill attendants on Sunday when I was up there, maybe they were I don't know what, but they didn't seem to know about that. So maybe I didn't describe it right, but they didn't seem to know about accepting brush up at Alls. But I think we should be doing that now. I think we can do that now. We also talked about accepting metal, I thought, and I think we've been doing that a little bit all along. So I think we should make it clear that those two items are acceptable right now. Or have we already made that knowledgeable to on our websites, etc. So, but I think that my final comment on the landfill sites is I think you're going to find, again, 2 weeks from now, greater and greater pressure to say, hey, I've got couches and appliances and other things that normally I would take to the landfill site, that when are you guys going to open up? Are you people, when are you councillors going to open this thing up, right? And we're going to come under increasing pressure. So I think by July 1st, at the very, very latest, I don't think we'll be able to withstand all the pressure that we'll have. So whether the students will be able to help enough to open up 4 days a week at each the landfill site, I don't know. That has to be a staff decision, I guess. And whether we need to hire other landfill attendants, it's very hard to train them up in such a short time. So, that's kind of a staff thing to come back to us on, I guess. So, anyway, those are generally my comments.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I should ask if our CAO clerk wants to comment on where we are as far as the things that we talked about at last week's special meeting. Are we making progress on those items? And
yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can speak to that. I believe at the meeting, our road superintendent indicated that he needed until about mid this week to get the site prepared at Alls for brush, which is still the case. All of his staff were on another project, so he's planning on doing some of that work tomorrow and Wednesday, which means because Alls is open Tuesdays and Saturdays, it means that on Saturday we will be able to accept brush at Alls Road. I'm assuming that he just hadn't had a chance to talk to the landfill attendants, which is probably why they were unsure. We've quietly been spreading the word and accept the fact that we're accepting scrap metal. So that's in the works, and everything will be set up for a Saturday start at Alls Road with brush. And how we're going to track how many loads a person brought in. We're kind of working with that in the office. It won't be perfect, but we will have some way of some matter of a tracking mechanism. One of the challenges we have right now is that our Facebook account has been frozen, and it's not just the municipality of Whitestone. There's numerous problems on Facebook right now. So we told our IT provider today is that if he can't resolve it, we'll have to set up a new Facebook account. And the reason that's important is that Facebook, much more than our website, is where people get information about Whitestone. The message gets put on Facebook and it gets shared and it gets shared with others, and that's how the messaging gets out right now. So the way to let people know about Brush at Alds Road is got to get that resolved tomorrow. We've been challenged for over a week on this, and it just doesn't seem to get resolved. So that's where we are with the brush and scrap metal at Alds Road. We will have 4 students this year. Normally we have 2, but 2 students will work on with facilities related grass cutting, and 2 other students will rotate, one at Alds and one at York. And so there'll always be a full-time a permanent person working at one of the landfill sites along with one of the students, and we'll rotate the students through the schedule. So that will be helpful to us until the end of August at least. We'll have 2 people at each landfill, assuming that council wants to open up to the 4 days a week. And we are getting a bit of pressure in the office as well. People want the summer hours. They want to get rid of the junk and the brush and all the things that they've accumulated patiently, over the last couple of months. So I'm thinking July 1st might be a good time for that. Our 2 students have already started, and 2 more will be starting June 15th. So that's a possibility. And I did double check my notes on playgrounds, and you're correct, Councillor Lamb. There's some discussion about playgrounds being open, but it's not a permitted recreational site at this point. But we're expecting that, in the next few weeks, that will be one of the permitted uses.
While you're talking, Madam CAO Clerk, you didn't have any. Did you have any further comments about the office? I take it you were not suggesting that we open the office to the general public.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I know that eventually we will need to do that. Today we've installed plexiglass partitions for each of our staff members, the CBO, the deputy clerk, the planning assistant, and our secretary receptionist all have a plexiglass divider between them and the hallway. And as I've explained to council before, there's not very many places in the office where you could be 6 feet apart from anyone other than in the offices that Pat and I have. So that's become a problem. That said, we've taken to wear masks in all the common areas, and we have increased cleaning and disinfecting activities that go on. When we do accept the public, we have another piece of plexiglass that we can install at the counter as a temporary measure, because as council knows, we're going to do some renovations in this building, which will have the effect of increasing space and distance between some of our folks. The only other complication is when we do open the office to the public, we think that we'll have, if our CBO has to meet with anybody, he will make an appointment to meet with them either at the front counter, which is possible because there'll be plexiglass there, or if it's an elongated meeting, as sometimes it is, he'll have to meet with them at the community center, because what we're not comfortable with at this point is having people come through the office, and then they have, because of the plexiglass now at the CBO's desk, there's really no place for people to sit and have a meeting with the CBO. So we're doing some interim work here to protect our staff, and then we have to think a little harder about when and how we invite the public back into our space.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions from council about COVID-19 specifically, or COVID-19 measures?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask your CAO a question on the...
You may.
I'm wondering how we're working towards, say, July 1st or sometime or at some certain date to receive, say, the furniture-type items, which now currently at York Street, for instance, because into their own bin, but it's a freestanding bin. And our hope was and plan was to use the steel bin for that purpose, and then just put the steel or metals just on open flat ground down in the back of the dump a little bit there. So that would be fairly easy to do, I'd say, as far as the physical part goes. Alds is a bit of a different deal. We'd have to somehow get the dump in a location that people can throw stuff into it and drive past it and such. And then I guess the other concern would be we don't want people handling money, maybe even as soon as July or August, I don't know. If it would be thinkable to or possible to just receive the people's name, ID, address, and actually do charge them. As Tim mentioned there during our meeting on the landfill, we don't want to open it up as a free-for-all with no charges for anything, because that could just overrun us with all kinds of stuff that we don't want people bringing. And once they get the feel and get to know that it's free gratis, we could be really beat up. So I'm just wondering if that is an area that we could look at between the metals and the type issues going forward here to move things for people in the next month or so. I don't know how Michelle feels about that. Maybe we're biting off too much too soon. I don't know.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. The one thing I can share about the scrap metal is that project is well underway. Our deputy clerk is reaching out. We know that there's 3 folks that will probably take us up on the option to pick up our scrap metal and have a revenue sharing option. And I know she's working on it, and I don't have all the details yet. Certainly, receiving names and addresses and billing people. I'd have to talk to our treasurer and about that. No doubt she will say it's a huge effort, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. I would just have to make sure that that's a possibility, and think about the logistics around that at our landfill sites and for our landfill attendants by gathering that information and doing that record keeping. So I don't object to any of your ideas. I think it's, we're trying to move a number of things forward with the landfills, but we're also trying to move a number of things forward on a lot of other fronts, which is keeping us all busy. So I can give some thought to that, and if there's no urgency, I can report back at June 15th with some options on how we can get people bringing the items to the landfill that they really want to get rid of, and whether there's a way to collect revenue in a different manner than we're collecting and not accepting cash.
Okay, that's all I'm asking for. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, I have a comment, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious if there's a possibility, because the students aren't in school now, if they're able to be trained and start earlier, if we could start with the regular summer hours and having both landfill sites open before July 1st. I'm just afraid that, they'll be slammed come July 1st and that whole first week if we don't let things trickle in a little bit before then. And my other question is it possible for us to start accepting electronics as well at the landfill, because that's not something that we normally charge for, and it would just give people a little bit more options of getting rid of some of their stuff that they've been waiting to bring.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, please.
So as I previously stated, we have 2 students working with us now and 2 other students that were just issued letters of offer, one today and one on Friday. And neither of those students can actually start until June 15th. So that's the earliest they could be here due to other commitments. And in terms of electronics, I actually agree. I'm surprised. I didn't think of that earlier, but you're right. It's not a difficult item to manage, and it just goes in a certain location, and our staff don't have to do a lot to assist with those type of drop-offs. So if you leave that with me, I'll include it in my report on June 15th if council's willing, or if you want to start it on Saturday at Olds, when we do that advertising, that's a possibility as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any changes that need to be done in terms of anything, so I don't see why we couldn't start it on Saturday with the brush as well.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I think you're right. It's one piece of messaging, and we want to be careful with our messaging. We can't have messages every week, this changing and that changing. So if we're going to accept electronic, scrap metal, and brush only at all, that's one piece of messaging that we can combine, and hopefully will help some of our folks that are gathering things up and wanting to get rid of them.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the electronics bins are still there, are they not?
Yes, they are. Yes.
So they're just closed there, but there's nothing other than opening them to enable people to drop stuff in them, right?
That's correct. And normally unless it's a large TV or some sort of unit, people simply handle it themselves as they do the circuit.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's not a difficult item to start accepting again.
Mr. Mayor, could I comment on that just briefly? Maybe Brian Woods can help me out on this one, but it seemed to me at our second to last ad hoc meeting, and I believe it was when Brian Sheridan was still here, but there's a problem in getting rid of electronic stuff currently, I believe. I'm not sure if we have a receiver for it. So that's something to think about.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McEwen. I actually hadn't heard that, but it's worthy of looking into if Brian Sheridan mentioned it.
Yeah, if you would, please. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Councillor Woods?
Yes.
I think what Joe is referring to is what I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here. Brian had told us that the electronics recycling is going to be handled differently. And I wanted to say, he said the program ends at the end of this year, and that there wouldn't actually be given an answer as to what we're going to be able to do with it until January 1 next year. So we're kind of left in limbo. But for right now, I'm sure that they would still take it in those bins. I think maybe that's what Joe was getting at there.
Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to suggest that I want to make sure that there's no COVID-19 related delays in picking up electronics. It could be that there's still electronics recycling going on, but are the recyclers actually picking up at landfill sites? So I will make those inquiries very quickly.
Yeah, the government started into this the electronics stewardship that's referred to as is being phased out by the government, and the responsibility for recycling of electronics is being stuck back on the manufacturers in the same way that I won't say in the same way, but with the same kind of thinking as tires were being stuck back on the tire industry. And what the solution to tires was, right? But the solution to so we don't really need to take tires, because you can take them to any tire dealer and say, here's my old tires, and they have to take them. But you can't just take any old electronics you have over to Radio Shack or whatever it's called these days, and or Future Shop or something. The Source, thank you, Councillor, or Future Shop or one of these outfits and say, here's my old electronics, you have to get rid of it. and there were. It was a very strange. People were demanding to know. So what's the plan going forward? And nobody knew. And I think honestly, the government doesn't know. And it wouldn't surprise me if somehow this whole plan to phase out the stewardship has got waylaid, especially with COVID-19 and so on. So maybe in the short run there isn't going to be a change, but it still is going to be important to make sure that once that bin gets full, there's somebody that we can phone that will come and take it away before. I mean, otherwise we'll end up having to close it again at some point in time once it's full, because we don't want the whole of a landfill site, especially York Street, to be piles of electronics. Anyway, so is it? I'll ask one more time. Are we content to let this go for tonight, and with these follow-up items, and pick it up again in 2 weeks' time?
I just have one more question.
Go ahead.
Have we announced anything with regards to Canada Day? I've had people asking, has it been officially canceled, or nothing's been posted about plans, and people are wondering what's happening with Canada Day?
Good question. The short answer is no. I don't think anything's been posted. The other side of that coin, of course, is the fact that nobody has actually done any work on doing anything relative to Canada Day. I think what happened was that we assumed originally when as you perhaps know, the Recreation Committee had started to look at things that we might do, and when it became clear that we could not assemble for large gatherings like that, we decided, well, we'll put it on hold until that changes, and that hasn't changed yet. You probably know that Canada's celebrations for Canada Day are being done virtually, so you will be able to tune in on the internet and probably on your TV and various other things, and you'll be able to watch. There will be performances done by various entertainers and things of that sort, and there'll be the usual things, some speeches and maybe even some fireworks that you can watch on the TV. But as far as people getting together at various locations and watching them, I think it's not happening. I don't think it's happening in other places like Parry Sound. To my knowledge, it's my knowledge. To my knowledge, they're not. So, but maybe we should go ahead and tell people that that's the situation, because we really haven't, I suppose.
I think we should post on our website and other places that there will be no Canada Day celebrations this year. So. I think that's what most people expect anyway. I don't think they expect to have any. So, excuse me.
Yeah, I concur.
If I might just add one little thing. If we're not accepting tires, let's please try to get the tires out of York Street that are there. We've done a tremendous job in cleaning the whole York Street area up. I'm not sure about Alds, to be honest, but hopefully the same. But we continue to not accept tires, which I'm in complete agreement with. But all the tires are still there. Can't we ship those out? So that's just to add to the little task, and clean that whole area up. The second thing that I've just had comments from the landfill attendants saying, "Oh my God, I know that they can't do the bottle shed, but the thousands of dollars of bottles that are going into our compactors, and there is. So I don't know when and if there is a plan to, have them start up again. I guess that's obviously their decision and their safety and being the parents of the school kids and things like that. But there's an awful lot of money being put into our compactors. So whether that's July or whatever. And the final comment I'll make is opening things back up on July the 1st isn't such a bad thing because July 1st happens to be in the middle of the week. So you're not going to be as busy as if July 1st was on a long weekend. The long weekend will be, either side, I guess, of July 1st, either before or after. So maybe that's a good target, June 30th or July 1st, to kind of open up a bit more. So.
Okay, so thank you for that comment. I was not aware that returnable bottles were going into the compactors. My understanding was that they were still being stored in.
No, they haven't been. No, the last month or so when I've been up there, they say if you have any liquor or beer bottles, put them in the compactor, and that's where they've been going.
So does that mean then that must mean that the existing bottle shed is full? Is that correct?
I think so, yes. I'm guessing, but it's closed. I know that. It's not open. So I assume that it's full of bottles, but they're not working the bottle shed or accepting anything.
The people were working it, but they were running out of places to store things, and I understood that the part of another shed was going to be used to store them. The replacement bottle sheds are in fact being built, and the folks who do the sorting said that once the sheds were there, they would go back to the new sheds were there. Then they should be there in time for the summer. They will be. They will go back to sorting. Now there is a problem at the moment, which is that you can't return them. The places that take them, the LCBO and the Home Hardware and Magnetawan and so on, are not accepting bottles because that system is closed down because of COVID-19. But I don't know. I guess maybe that's something we have to check into the status of and see what's going on. It's if there's any plan to change that. But there are a lot of bottles. There's a couple of trailers, in fact, covered trailers that are full of bottles that are just sitting there waiting for an opportunity to go back to to be returned for money. They're not in landfill, but they're there. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I was informed that they were not receiving bottles because they can't receive and handle everyone's bottles, and because of COVID, they weren't handling things received from people. And in no time at all, they'd be spilling out into the yard. I brought my bottles back home, and I'm storing them for whenever and if it opens up.
Yeah, some people are doing that.
I just don't think the sites are at all ready to receive bottles at this time. Beth, you might be able to comment on that. You're more familiar with the...
Yeah, I was trying to jump in there. I just wanted to say that as of June 4th, Magnetawan is going to start receiving bottles and cans again, not in large quantities, unless it's by appointment. I'm not sure if that will include our groups or not in terms of bringing a large donation into them. And as far as I know, the beer stores are still only accepting small quantities, not cases and cases of bottles.
But you said as of, what did you say, as of June 4th?
They announced the Magnetawan Home Hardware had a post on Facebook that starting June 4th, they will start receiving bottles and cans again.
Well, then they must be able to get rid of them somehow, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, I don't think they would. So that's interesting. Okay. We can follow up on that one. Anyway. All right. Sorry, I'm just making some notes here. Anything else about related to COVID-19 response stuff, or can we move on to another item? We'll get some more reports on these things. We'll have more to report on this in 2 weeks. All right. I think I can go back to I can close that item and go back to my regular. Now we have 13.3, which was some proposed adjustments to capital projects. And there is some memo. I will turn it over to our CAO clerk to introduce this item on behalf of the Works Department.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as you know, our road superintendent left, and we have an acting road superintendent. But in assigning him that role, I've taken on the role of managing these capital projects based on his experience, the acting superintendent in these matters. So I've had to quickly get some tenders out for pulverizing gravel and surface treatment. And in reviewing the numbers and the quantities, as it turns out, we won't have quite enough money to do all of the projects that we anticipated. So as noted in my memo, I'm recommending to make sure we stay in budget, to obviously finish Balsam Road, do Canning Road. And Canning Road is not the whole road. It's from Balsam to just before you get to McPhee Road, just past the driveway for the new tower. So that section there. And then beyond, that's about 1,600 meters. And beyond that, there's a couple of culverts to change, but there's no need to dig up the whole road. We'll just change the culverts and patch with hot mix. So that work, the gravel and all the work that's needed for those two projects will eat up a fair bit of money, and it won't leave quite enough. It'll leave enough money to do the excavation and sub-ex work and some culvert work on the hill on Whitestone Road, but we'd be short approximately $56,000 for the remainder. So my thought is that we do the excavation work on Whitestone Lake Road this year, and that can be done in-house by staff. They're quite competent, able to do that, and then let it settle over the winter as we did with Balsam, and do the surface treatment next year, and that will our budget numbers in line. And I've been generous with my budget estimates, but without the tenders closing, I don't know the exact numbers. But at this point, I haven't included we don't need to pulverize Whitestone, but I haven't included the gravel and the surface treatment in the tenders that are going to be released very shortly. So that's really a budget-related item, and just want to let Council know where we are with those projects.
Any questions on that report?
Your estimates, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. I've had several people in the last year or so ask me, because Whitestone Road was looked at so seriously, because we go back quite a while now before we finally got going on these. It's been a very long time, and they've had such a horrible road from 20 into where you turn into the main Whitestone Lake Road there. I guess the whole surface treated part of it was in such disarray. So I'm pleased to see that at least we're looking at bringing it up to some state that we can leave it through the winter, let it settle like we did, and we can use the example of Balsam Road. and then hopefully do a better job on the whole thing next year. So just caution that we may be getting some complaints and major inquiries on that particular road, but hopefully they will receive it calmly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, you had a comment?
Well, I guess the comment on the Canning Road situation is I'm a little disappointed, and you know, I guess I'm pointing some fingers at the job that was done down there 3 or 4 years ago. Like when we tar and chipped Canning Road, this is going back to four or 5 years ago. We did half of it. We didn't. It went all the way out past Carby-Huey Lane. So, you know, it included where Bell Canada went in with their tower and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, what's happened on that part that was done 4 or 5 years ago is that there's several areas that have heaved, and which they weren't supposed to do. So we either didn't plan it out right, or we didn't do it right, or we didn't, you know, excavate right, and so when we do these huge projects like that, we got to make sure that they're done right, so that we're not going back to revisit them and patch them up and that sort of thing. Like we shouldn't be patching tar and chip roads that we did 3 and 4 years ago, which is really what we're doing here on Canning Road on the part that was done, and so it's a little. It's a little disappointing. I guess the other question I had, and only because we're talking about Canning Road, did we ever solve with Bell? You know, they ripped that road up in putting that tower in, and there was some discussion as to, you know, what we would offer and what they would give in terms of a contribution towards this. And was that ever settled? Question mark.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. I know that Brian Sheridan was actively pursuing it because I was copied on the emails, and it's really now on my shoulders to pursue it. We gave them an estimate of the work and the cost, and I think that they probably, without someone hounding them on a regular basis, they've chosen to ignore it. But it actually is on my list of things to do. As soon as I can get these tenders out the door, and I'm doing a tender for So we haven't forgotten about it. I just need to remind these folks that they owe us some money.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Can I just get a motion to receive this report for information, please?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Seconded by?
I'll second. Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. And that's just to receive the report on the capital project adjustments for information. Is there anybody opposed to accepting that? All right, thank you. I will declare that carried. One final item in this section, and that is an August newsletter. And once again, I will turn it over to the clerk to explain what the question is that we're asking you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, we didn't have a May newsletter, and we have a schedule of activities that we look at from time to time. So if we were going to do an August newsletter, we would typically start around this time, beginning of June, looking for information from all of our the library and the committees. And that's because you pretty well need a 6 or 7 week lead time. The August newsletter gets mailed the week of July 27th, because it goes with the second installment tax report. So unlike the May newsletter, where there's a little bit of wiggle room, or the December newsletter where there's a little bit of wiggle room in terms of timing, we have to have the newsletter finalized gone to print, folded, and ready to be inserted in the tax bills to be mailed by July 27th. So that's the timing piece. And then the question is, do we want to do a newsletter? It would certainly look a little bit different than our normal newsletter, but there may be things that Council wants to talk about. The COVID-19 is a moving target, so what we say in the newsletter and what goes to print the first week of July may change by the time the newsletter is printed. So I'm kind of making a long story longer, but the question really is does Council want to have an August newsletter? In which case we need to get moving on it from a staff level.
Okay, thank you. Comments from councillors?
I can go first, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think most definitely so in the absence of a May newsletter, and I think we've got lots of things that we can say. I would really like us to finally, maybe in this issue, grab off the approved budget for the year and try to make it understandable. I think Pat has done a great job of making, a complex budget understandable to me as a councillor for the first time, and I think I would like to see that put to our ratepayers in terms of a pie chart, what goes where, what really goes into the makeup of your taxes, right? How much and that pie chart can really form the basis of a brief and concise sort of letter to say, here's what we're in control of, here's what we're not. We've got other things, obviously, to talk about, the capital projects, some of the landfill issues will be important by that point, and some of the initiatives that we've made, some of the capital projects, including the library, and where that stands and how that's going to come out looking, and it's going to end up being a library/technology center. So there's lots of news that we have, right? And so I think most definitely that we should have an August newsletter. So, and it costs us very little because it's going out with the tax bill. In terms of postage and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a comment. I think it's quite significant to put out an August newsletter this time around, in particular with COVID and such. It's the only correspondence we really have directly to all of our ratepayers. And I think it's tricky to try to hit them on Facebook and hit them on web and this and that and the other thing. But when that goes right directly to them, then I would hope at this point in time they'll be looking for information from us. And I think that at this point in time they will be. So I think it's quite significant to encapsulate best we can at this point with all the things going on. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments? Would someone like... Well, go ahead, Councillor Gorham-Matthews.
Yeah, I was just going to say I support the newsletter as well, and I think a number of the community groups that sometimes contribute would appreciate it as well, because I know the Agricultural Society is working on a Plan B in place of the Fall Fair, which is going to include a community-wide scavenger hunt that can be done socially distanced, and it's going to be a lot of fun for different family groups and teams to participate in, and that would be a venue for them to share that with everyone.
Okay, great. Would somebody like to move then that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby agree to issue an August newsletter with the next tax bill on July 27th?
I'll move that, Councillor Woods.
Councillor Woods moves, seconded by?
I'll second.
Councillor Gorham-Matthews. Any further discussion on this one? Can I assume that everyone is in agreement then? No objections? All right. Correspondence. We have a list of correspondence which has, I'm just bringing it up here, it has
only one letter.
I thought it was up at the front. Is there one, Madam Clerk, help me out here. Is there only one item of correspondence?
Yes, Mr. Baird, there's only one.
It says it's listed on page 3. Did I miss it?
It's at the bottom.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I apologize. All right. So there's only one. Can I get the motion? Suggested motion is that whereas the Council of Municipality Whitestone has reviewed the correspondence items, as the item is listed on page 3 of the June 1st, 2020 Council agenda, now therefore be it resolved that Council does hereby receive the correspondence items for information with the following extracted for further discussion. And I think we better discuss item A very quickly. So, and anyway, so can somebody move that, please?
I'll move, Councilor McKeon.
Councilor McKeon moves, seconded by?
I'll second.
Councilor Gorman Matthews. Thank you very much. Well, we'll have the discussion. Does anybody object to discussing this item? All right. So the motion is carried. Item A it's a McKellar. I guess it's a request. It's essentially what happened is as follows. We, if you recall, we received correspondence some time ago from it was actually the municipality McDougall, and their councillor Kim Dixon, who was the representative who is our representative, and theirs too, on the Parry Sound Emergency Management Service Land Ambulance Committee, had resigned to take a staff position, and they were saying, okay, we will replace him with the councillor who replaced Councillor Dixon, and that was Louis Malott. And McKellar, and we agreed to that, and I forget who the other municipality is that's involved, agreed to it, I guess. And then McKellar pushed back and said, no, we don't want that particular, I'm paraphrasing here, we really want that particular individual. We have somebody better qualified to propose, and we never got reports from Councillor Dixon, and so we don't. And they also wanted to have a rotation basis. You've heard this before. Some of you have heard this before. A couple of years ago, McKellar had pushed for us to have a defined rotation basis as to which municipality would get to appoint the person in a particular year. This is a rep who represents, 3 or 4 municipalities. So, I guess my question is, do you want to take any action in response to this, or do you simply want to be aware of it? I don't know how this matter will get settled. The last time it occurred, by the way, and it did occur previously, there was it went back and forth amongst the various municipalities. I think our position was, okay, we don't care which of the candidates it is. You guys, the folks who did care, you sorted out amongst yourselves. I would have to, I guess, this is not a committee that we've heard a great deal I'd have to agree with the Reva McKellar. This is not something that we've heard a lot about at our council, this particular committee. But anyway, do we simply want to receive it for information, and leave it there, or do we wish to take some particular action in response to McKellar's letter?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I thought we had supported Lewis. I know of Lewis. I served on a committee with him. I don't know that I know the person from McKellar. If we said, and we made a decision last time that we supported Lewis, I thought that's what we did. And if Carling,
it is what we did.
And if Carling, being the other municipality, also supported Lewis, and McKellar disagrees, then surely, to goodness, that is a 2-to-1 decision that's been made. Maybe I'm seeing it wrong, but and I have no basis to go back and say the person from McKellar is better than Lewis or not. Right? Maybe, I don't know. It's difficult to make the decision, but I think the decision's been made if Carling has agreed to Lewis.
May I speak, Mr. Mayor?
Yay.
Yeah, I just want to add as well that I think we've already supported someone, and I don't think it's a matter of McKellar suggesting that their candidate is better. They're just suggesting that they want a candidate. So I don't see any strong rationale in changing our support of the candidate we've already supported.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with both council's comments. I think for McDougall to carry out the continue to the end of this term, that was possibly partly what they were doing in putting Mr. Meloche in there. So I would say it's four municipalities, I believe: McKellar, McDougall, Whitestone, and Carling. So it's actually like 3 votes to 1. So I don't know where McKellar are coming from. Totally conviction that they historically haven't received enough recognition on committees. They were looking at 2-year terms and 4-year terms and make sure you rotate from municipality to municipality. I don't know if they ever got anything formalized on that. I don't believe they did. It's just a McKellar thing. I think we agree with certain aspects of it, but I don't think we followed them by way of resolution, if I recall. So I would stick with the person we've selected and see what happens. Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess who have we not heard from? Councillor Woods. Do you have any opinion on the matter?
I'm in agreement with everyone else. I mean, we supported Mr. Malott, and I don't think we should be saying no now and changing our mind. I mean, if McKellar wants one thing and all the rest of us have voted to support Mr. Malott, I think we should continue to show our support and stand firm with our decision.
Okay. All right then. I guess the only action that we will take, and I don't think we need a motion for this, is that perhaps we would follow up with and let the I keep calling him the Reeve. I don't know. He might be the mayor now. I think they may have changed it, but the mayor of McKellar is Peter Hopkins.
I think he's still the Reeve.
Is he the Reeve? Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Anyway, Peter Hopkins is his name. I can communicate to Peter, or our clerk can communicate to Tammy that this is that we're not moving on this. I wonder if the other thing we should do is communicate with Councillor Malott of McDougall and say there has been a complaint raised in the past that we never heard anything from this committee, and these are our expectations of you as a rep, so that he knows. they did make a comment in there, which is a fair comment about their involvement with the Belvedere Heights Board, because Don Carmichael, as you perhaps know, who is a member of the Keller Council, is our rep on Belvedere Heights. And I can tell you from private conversations with Don that he did a great deal of work to try to ensure that the situation there which was very unfavorable back in the fall, if you recall, got resolved. And I shared with you this notice that came from the West Parry Sound Health Center saying that they've got things back under control over there, and I think that's a very substantial achievement, and I think that's a rep who certainly did a great deal of work on our behalf, and also, as you recall, kept us informed by sending us messages at various times, and so I would hold that up as an example of the sort of thing that we do expect from people who represent multiple municipalities on boards and committees, that they do give us feedback on what's going on, and so that perhaps we might pass that on to Louis. Anyway, if there's no if you're content with that, I think we can move on. We just received. We voted to receive it, so we'll just say there is no further action on those particular items. So that brings us to number, if I'm not mistaken, to number 15. I have to go back to the top of the agenda here, but I think it's number 15, which is councillor items. Councillors, do you have any items?
I have none.
No.
Okay, hearing none, I will say councillor items, none. Questions from the public, and I don't know that we have any members of the public left on the call, unless I'm wrong. Are there any members of the public? Well, I guess there aren't any questions from them then. So we could have done without one. The next thing that we need to do then is to move into closed session. We have a couple of hopefully fairly brief items that shouldn't take very long. Could I get a mover and second?
I'll move.
I heard Councillor Woods, and I heard who else?
I'll second it, Councillor Lamb.
Councillor Lamb seconds. Be it resolved that this meeting be adjourned it is 9:01 p.m. And what we're going to do is we're going to hang up, and then we will call back on a different number. And Madam CAO Clerk, if you wouldn't mind, I need the code for that second number. If you could fax it, or not fax it, text it or email it to me, because I don't have the pink papers in front of me.
Leaving conference.
Yes, I will. I will, Mr. Mayor.
Leaving conference.
I assume that everybody's leaving, so there must be in favor.
Would you send
that motion?
Would you send the code to me, Michelle, please?
I will, yes.
Thank you.
What do you do? Just hang up, don't you?
Yeah, you just hang up, and then you got to call back the same number, but with a different code, right?
Thank you. I got it.
Thank you.
Leaving conference.
Joe Lamb.
Leaving conference.
Joe McEwen.
George Comrie.
Leaving conference.
Brian Woods.
Leaving conference.
Michelle Hendry.
Working hard. Not done yet.
Leaving conference.
Joe McEwen.